What's up, YouTube? My name is Tara. Some people call me Mama Sage. For new people here to my channel, I work an active 12-step recovery program, and I've been doing this thing for about 4.5 years now. My idea behind the channel is just to help anyone who's struggling with recovery or getting into recovery know that it doesn't matter how far you have gone or what you've done in your life, recovery is possible if you want it, and you can work for it. So for those of you who are returning subscribers, thank you so much for sticking around and coming back to watch another video. The support that you guys show means everything to me. You guys are the coolest. Yeah, so let's get into another episode of Tara Was a Mess, because this series of story times is all about how much of a train wreck I was before I got into recovery. I don't even know how to start this story time. I found God on mushrooms, and it was a relapse. That's what my sponsor told me, and I had to give up my date. And this was back in 2012 whenever I got clean and sober for the first time. My first husband and I, we had split up, and my kids from a previous relationship and I were living separately from him. We had moved out of our home because it wasn't a safe or healthy environment. So, you know, of course, he and I see each other because he brings the kids over from, you know, spending some time with them because they really missed him. And when he dropped the kids off at my apartment, you know, he and I start making goo-goo eyes at each other and everything. And so we just fell right back into the routine. We fell right back into what we knew. And I think that both of us really wanted things to work, but it just wouldn't. So I started going back over to the house and hanging out with him and a couple of friends of ours. So we were hanging out and the kids were gone. I think they were at his parents' house for the night. And this wasn't the first time that I had gone over there to hang out. This had become a routine, couple, 3, 4, 5 times a week. I was going over to hang out and the kids were going, and, you know, and he and his roommates were drinking. I was not drinking. I was still doing the recovery thing at the time. And this one night they had some mushrooms that they were going to do, and had a good amount of them. And I figured, you know what, comes out of the ground, I'm going to do this, you know, because I had always wanted to, and the opportunity just hadn't presented itself. We didn't have the connection, you know, before this point in the relationship. So I take the mushrooms. I had a few caps, few stems. We didn't weigh it. We were just like, nom, nom, you know, and so a little while later, half hour, 45 minutes, you know, they start kicking in and things look cool. Like, things are starting to look pretty. And what I really liked about mushrooms is that they were like really relaxing. It wasn't something where you were afraid. You know, you're not afraid that you're going to have a bad trip. You just start to feel loose and relaxed, and things start to look cooler and more interesting. And so, yeah, that part was a good experience. And I think we were all hanging out in the living room in the beginning, and then like the two guys went away And I think they were like out walking around the backyard or taking a walk or something like that. Me, I was paranoid. I'm like, I'm not going anywhere. Like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm like, you're lucky I'm letting the dogs out right now and like the door is open because I was just like so paranoid anytime I would try to leave the house and be on anything. Because, you know, being a mom, like I didn't want to have my kids taken away, you know, because they were through my addiction. And I know that this might sound really weird to some people, but during that whole time, like the kids, I tried really, really hard to always put them in the forefront of my mind and make sure that they were in a safe place and that they had everything that they needed, and that they knew that they were well loved. And, you know, we would go out and do fun stuff, go to the park, go skating, go to the movies, just all kinds of different stuff, hang out at friends' houses and everything. But I didn't want them to be in dangerous situations if I could at all prevent it. So ex-husband and this friend are off doing their own thing, right? And the other roommate was a friend who I had actually met in jail. That's a whole nother pot of coffee. So that'll be a different story time at some point, I'm sure. So she and I are feeling real relaxed and everything, and things between her and I had gotten bad before I moved out. And I had accused her of sleeping with my husband or trying to sleep with my husband, like the two of them having a really intimate relationship. And it's not that it's not okay to have friends of the opposite sex, because it absolutely is. But he and I were going through all of this stuff at this time, and I was really young and didn't have the same mindset about pretty much anything that I have now. I was just really immature and jealous and insecure. And so she and I did not part on friendly terms whenever he and I split up, or a little bit before that. So she and I are sitting there and we're like crying. I can't even explain it other than that I started leaking. Like, I just started leaking. I was like crying, like tears were coming out of my eyes. My nose was running. I felt like I was salivating a lot more than I normally would. I just felt like everything was leaking. And I wasn't sad. You know, it wasn't like I was recognizing these feelings and I was like, oh, everything sucks, you know. It was just like I'm sitting there laughing and we're having a good time and we're hanging out, and then all of a sudden I just start like leaking, and I couldn't get it to stop. So I'm sitting there with like my sleeve and tissues and stuff, and this friend is sitting there and she's like, it feels like my brain is melting. And I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, I need bowls. I need bowls for my ears because my brain is leaking out of my ears. Like, it feels like everything is just like, you know. So I was definitely not the only one that was having that like loose, relaxed feeling. So, you know, I've got to go back to the recovery piece, because at this point in time, I was really trying to find a connection, you know, with a God of my understanding, some sort of a higher power that was bigger than me. And I've always believed in like evolution, and I've always believed that there is a greater entity out there in the universe, that created life. There's some life force energy, and I just wasn't sure exactly what it was. But that's what I found that night. So we're, you know, the guys have come back in and we're sitting there hanging out and we're all joking around and stuff. And I feel like I just got sucked in to that spot where I was noticing everything. I was noticing how things looked, and I was paying attention, you know, because they say that the walls will like breathe. And so I was watching the walls breathe, and like where the walls meet the ceiling. And we had a hardwood floor in that house. So I'm noticing the walls and the floor, and like I didn't have as many tattoos then. Actually, I didn't have most of the tattoos. It was quite a while ago. Obviously, 2012, that was like 7 years ago. Yeah. So I'm sitting on the couch, and I look at my arm, you know, and I'm like looking at like my skin and my skin cells. And you just see things so much differently whenever you're on drugs. I mean, that's just how it is. You know, they're supposed to alter your perception. They're supposed to help you see things differently or make you see things differently, whether it's good, bad, or ugly. You know, they alter the way that we look at the world, the way that we look at life. So I'm sitting there looking at my arm, and I'm thinking, wow, all of these little atoms are like moving together. You know, all of these little atoms are moving together at just the right frequency, just the right vibration to create matter. Trippy. And this matter is what I'm made of. I didn't do that. I didn't do that. You know, there has to be something bigger. And I started looking at the floor. The wood grain in the floor was moving. And then I thought, wow, we have a basement. We have a basement. Okay, so I'm sitting here on this couch that's pretty heavy, and there's a wood floor under the couch, and it actually covers this huge hole in the ground. And all of these little atoms are rubbing together at just the right frequency to create this wood, which is dead, but it's still living because the atoms are moving at the right frequency to create matter. So everything is energy. Everything is energy. And I'm thinking, you know, like all these atoms and all these pieces of wood, and they're all working together to hold me and this huge couch up out of a big hole in the ground. Like, that was the moment that I knew that there was something bigger. That moment was when I knew that to think that I was the be all end all, or really anything too important in the grand scheme of things at all, was just really egotistical and naive, I think is the best way that I can explain it. I just felt like there's no single piece of me that could have put this beautiful world together. I can't make wood. You know, I can help a plant grow. I can help a tree grow, you know. But and I can build things, right? So my parents taught me about how to build a house and all the different components of that, including like electricity and water, etc. So I can do that. But I cannot create the particles that make up anything. And I cannot create a river. I cannot create this planet. And beyond that, I can't create this solar system. There's no way. And beyond that, there are multiple solar systems, essentially infinite solar systems. This is why atheism confuses me, because what do you think did that? It's energy. Like, God is energy. It's love, it's happiness, it's abundance, right? And so you can look at that however you want to. It doesn't matter. And I'm not sitting here saying that like my higher power is like everyone's higher power, because it's not. You know, that's one of the things that I love about 12 step, is that my conception of a higher power is my conception of a higher power, and it works for me, and it feels authentic to me, and I understand it, you know, but it might not make sense for you. But I don't understand how anyone could think that there wasn't something bigger at work to create all of this. You know, we lived in Ohio whenever I was, you know, still out there doing the deal. And I love Ohio. I love it. It's beautiful, especially down by the Ohio River where I was born. It's down by the Ohio River where I was born. It's gorgeous. It's actually a part of the Appalachian foothills, and there's nothing more beautiful to me in terms of nature than whenever it's the height of fall, like mid-October in Ohio, and all of the trees are orange and yellow and red, and everything looks like it's set on fire, and you can just see these rolling mountains and hills that are just bursting with colors. It's pretty sweet. I've told my husband so many times, like, whenever I'm ready to bite the bullet, I want to be outside, and I hope that it's at the height of fall, and I hope that I'm in the mountains. But whenever we moved out here, one of the things that we loved about it here in Arizona is that the terrain is so vastly different. So whenever you're looking at the landscape as you're driving, I mean, everything is so wide open. You can see for hundreds of miles in any direction if you live, you know, further out away from a city, especially. And I keep like glancing out my window. It blows me away whenever I'm driving, because these mountains are huge. And as I look out at the horizon, it's like you can kind of see the slope of the earth, because you can see so much all at once. This is just one planet. Just one. If there's life here, there definitely has to be life elsewhere. If we can adapt to this atmosphere, then there have to be other forms of life that can exist in other atmospheres. So, after this experience, I was talking to my best friend at the time, and her name was Amanda. And I told Amanda, like, dude, you're not gonna believe this. I had this spiritual awakening. You know, I had this moment of clarity and understanding where everything made sense. And I found the higher power that works for me, you know? And Amanda's like, oh yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I had that same experience. Like, you know, a lot of people feel that way on mushrooms and acid and stuff. And I was like, okay, cool. You know, like whatever. Well, then Amanda told her sponsor because she was worried about me. And then her sponsor told my sponsor, and my sponsor called me out on it. And she's like, so when were you going to tell me about this? And I was like, oh, yeah, about that. So, you know, we talked about it, and she's like, look, you know, if you want it, then this is what it looks like, you know, and if you're not sure that you want it, then I can't sponsor you. If you're going to continue to do this kind of thing and say that it's okay, then I'm just not going to be able to sponsor you. And so I felt really betrayed. I felt really betrayed because I felt like if I was worth it, that she would like help me work through that whole confusion process. You know, I felt like the experience of having, like, I felt like having that spiritual experience justified, you know, using something that altered the way that my brain works, because it opened me up to this thing that I'm supposed to have to be able to stay sober, you know, according to 12-step ideology. Justification, whatever. So, after that, I was hanging out with these people that I had done mushrooms with one night, and the girl was like, "Oh, you're not an alcoholic. You don't have a problem with drugs. Da 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 da. I've gotten drunk. I've never seen you as drunk as I've been." I'm like, "I don't think you've been paying attention, cause yeah." And then she cracks a Budweiser in my face, and that was my favorite. That was my favorite beer. You know, just to drink, like, just to drink. So she cracks this can and she's holding it in front of my face. And she's like, "Ooh, can't you smell it? Doesn't that smell good? Don't you want to drink?" And I'm like, "Nope, nope, nope, nope." And I can smell it, and it smells so good. And like, my mouth is watering. And I wasn't on anything else at this point. I was like completely sober. I hadn't been doing mushrooms at this point or anything like that. And that was it. Between those two situations, or that series of 3 situations, I was off and running for another 2.5 years. I still believe that the experience that I had on mushrooms that day was what I needed to be able to wrap my mind around the idea that there was something bigger out there and that I could have a relationship with that in some way. I don't regret it. I don't regret it at all. I'm very, very grateful. I'm not saying that I suggest that anyone go out and try mushrooms if you haven't had a spiritual experience. I'm not saying that you should go out and relapse. I'm not saying that this is the right way to go about things. I'm just saying that this was my experience. This is what happened for me, and it was an experience that altered the rest of my life, because at that point, I knew that there was something bigger that I could call on whenever I needed help. And then I was able to do that a couple of years later. So I hope that you guys got something out of this video. And if you have any questions, drop some comments below. I'll link some other videos in the description. And yeah, talk to me. Tell me what your experience was. What did your experience on mushrooms look like? Is that something that you have considered doing? Have you considered trying to have a psychedelic experience in recovery to find, you know, the spiritual solution, or to find a connection with a higher power of your understanding? Let me know. Let me know what you think. So yeah, see you guys later.